Well, hello. I hope you can hear me okay this time and everything's going well. Bary Winbolt here, as promised, with my meetup, my regular meetup, 6 o'clock today. And may change the time in future because I've had a bit of feedback from the last one that 6 p.m. is a bit early for a lot of people. And I have quite a lot of followers in America as well, so it'll probably help me to put it on a bit later. Anyway, from wherever you are, I've got a little. If I look over this side periodically, it's because this is where my control panel is, and I can actually see. I can't see you, of course, but I can see your questions coming in. And the reason I have it over here on my right is because if I have it in front of me, I can see myself all the time. And as you can imagine, that is most off putting. So I'm going to park that out of the way. Um, Right, so welcome, Meetups. The idea behind this is that for a number of years I've wanted to get together and just chat to people really about ideas. I've been running my blog now since 2009, and over that time it's accumulated a lot of posts, quite a lot of comments and interaction, and dare I say it, some loyal and regular followers. And if you're one of them, thank you very much. Um, the reason that I wanted to start something a little more immediate than posting posts on the blog, I used to do it daily, I now do it a little less frequently, but is because I wanted to be able to respond to some of the questions and topics that were coming up or that have come up over the years. And I just think these days it's a more immediate way. And finally, to use YouTube in this case, and finally the technology's caught up and has made it a lot simpler from my end anyway, and I think for most people logging on. Now, if you are logged on, well, clearly you are if you're hearing me, it'd be great if you could just send me a little text, just sort of a thumbs up, just to let me know you're there. Maybe just put in, say hi and where you're from, something like that, and it'll give me an idea of the mix of people. It'll also allow me to test the text, the chat box here on the right. Now, later on, you can ask me questions, or you can ask me questions via chat at any time during this broadcast, and that's the idea of these sessions. Today, I'm choosing the topic of life doesn't have to be like that because it's been my strapline for a number of years, and I thought I'd like to explain it really, and if it's not obvious already, and just to explore a couple of ideas. But whatever topic I choose, and I'll choose a different one each week. For example, resilience will be coming up because that is actually what I get most hits on my website for. Stress and resilience, but under the heading of resilience, it attracts a lot of attention. I get quite a lot of requests for questions about brief therapy, about difficult people, relationships, parenting. I guess all of these things, depending on the questions that come in, I'll take a stab at. I'm not saying I have the answers to all these things, but I've accumulated quite a lot of understanding and quite a lot of tactics over the years. So, as I said, if you look on your screen, on looking at my screen, the chat box is on my bottom right hand corner of the screen, and you may have to scroll down a little bit, but there is actually a little image probably of you, I guess, or your name should be there, and beneath that it says say something, and in that box you can send me a quick little text message just to say hi. Now later on, of course, this is how most people will communicate their questions. Some come in via the blog, some come in via email, but that's what I'm hoping to do over the next few weeks, is to build this up to something where there's a kind of a backlog of questions and to give me plenty of stuff to work with. So for now, and by the way, this will last about 20 minutes. I think shortish is best because the people are busy, and if there's more interest and people want to do something a bit more substantial, then there are ways of doing that later on through webinars or training courses, something like that. For now, I'm just setting up the medium and getting used to using live video online. to communicate, and that's the basis for what will be going forward with my work, because I don't want to travel as much as I used to, and this is a great medium for doing it. So great to see that, Caroline, you're online. Thank you very much for your message. And Becky in Ontario, that's pretty good too. And others are coming in. I'll take a look at that in a minute. Anyway, so as I was saying, what about this life doesn't have to be like that? A few years ago, I came up, I don't know, 10, 20 years, I can't remember now, but I came up with this strapline when I was putting a website together, because I think more than anything else, that really kind of sums up what I'm about. When somebody tells me something can't be done, it's like red rag to a bull to me. What that means in terms of my therapy work is that, or coaching, or the consultancy work I've done over the years, it means that I'm always trying to hand out information to demonstrate to people that a negative worldview isn't entirely justified. Now, I'm an optimist. I can't help it. I just always have been. And optimists can get depressed, by the way. I got pretty depressed at one point in my life. But anyway, that's another story. I'm an optimist, and part of my joie de vivre, part of my joy about life is I want to share that. I'm not for a moment dissing people who have a more negative mindset, and let's say, for argument's sake, about half of us are inclined to see the glass half empty rather than glass half full. But the point about that is that glass half empty mentality brings with it a certain accuracy, actually, because pessimists tend to be a little bit more accurate in their thinking than optimists. However, it's not really just about pessimism. It's also about what's known as explanatory style. And if you have a fairly negative and permanent explanatory style, then you tend to be more at risk, more vulnerable to stress, anxiety, general, what used to be called the lesser psychiatric disorders, depression, although it's by no means lesser these days, and so forth. So my mission really has been to say, look, life doesn't have to be like that. Here's this. You can do it with this. You can do that. You can do that. And put the information out there. And that's what I've been trying to do with my blog and through my training work. And also, I like to make waves. I like to rattle a cage a bit and say to people, look, you know, you can stay in the doldrums if you like. And indeed, that may be where you need to be for a time. But you don't have to believe that you have to stay there. You can actually influence the quality of your life for the better. Now, over the years, people have spoken about positive thinking, and I'm quite vehemently opposed to that notion, because positive thinking tells you what to think. It says, hey, think good things about yourself. Hey, believe in yourself, and this, that, and the other. Whereas I'm more about telling people how to think, giving them the information so that they can learn how to think differently, and perhaps even more than that, how to take control of what they think so that they have mastery over their mental processes. Because that way, folks, lies good health, well-being, and the rest. Even if the bad stuff hits, you're better able to deal with it when you have command of your mental faculties, when you can choose what to think, how to think, even when to think. These are very, very important aspects of mental health and well-being. And these are becoming increasingly well-known these days. At last, I've been doing this for nearly 30 years now, and there's been a big change in social awareness, in awareness generally. But if I'm honest, I have to say I don't see much evidence that people are doing much about it. The evidence is out there, but depression is on the increase, anxiety is on the increase, and generally we live ever more stressful, and ever more demands are placed upon us. One of the worrying trends I've seen in the workplace, particularly among younger people, and by that I mean 20-something, 30-something, lower end of the 30s, is that since 2007 and the economic crunch came, in the UK anyway, pretty well worldwide, people are beginning increasingly to buy into the belief system put out around austerity. In other words, we've got to tighten our belts. We have to have a tough life for a time, this, that, and the other. And younger people say to me in the workplace now, I'm lucky to have a job. I can't fight back. I can't defend myself. They just keep dumping more work on me, but I just have to keep doing it. Now, appreciate the people I talk to are probably those who are in difficulty. So that's not a representative sample. But it's worrying that people would be saying this because, of course, you don't have to submit to unfair working practice, to never-ending workload, to extreme demands, to low pay, and all of the other stuff that's in the media the whole time. So anyway, that's what I'm about. So life doesn't have to be like that. And as I said earlier, a few more people have logged on. If you can just send me a sign, a thumbs up, a little hi, and where are you? It would be great. I've had a couple of people here, quite local to me, unsurprisingly, and others logging on. Apparently there are more watching. So hi, and let me know what you think. Now, as I said, if you missed the very beginning, the purpose of this is to have this contact on a weekly basis, but also to enable you to ask questions. There may be something that's troubling you, or it may be something you want to do better. It may be something about a relationship. It may be something about somebody else's health, about somebody else's behavior. After all, I was originally best known for my book and seminars on difficult people, I think it's fair to say. And in fact, if I'd stayed in that niche, or that niche, as the Americans erroneously say, their pronunciation, if I'd stayed in that niche, I would have probably become the guy to go to for difficult people or something like that. I could have exploited it, but I get bored staying in one place. So I did lots of things. So I deal with emotional health and well-being generally, more widely, and that usually means attending to things like our own inner life, attending to our relationships, attending to how we go about working, attending to our stress levels, and so on and so forth. Those things which I deal with regularly in my work as a therapist or as a coach, or online via the blog, and with my training work as well. So those are the things I deal with. No questions are coming in, so I'm glad to see everybody out there has got nothing of interest, or maybe you don't know how to actually phrase your question yet, or to frame it. I'd also say, by the way, that these questions are entirely anonymous, so you're not going to be revealing anything. I'll have a question on the screen and I'll be able to respond to it. And if you don't want to put your name, simply don't put your name. I'll generally only use first names anyway. So you don't feel you're having to reveal your soul or put yourself into an awkward situation if you have a question. You can also send me questions at my email address of info@barywinbolt.com, or via the comments box on my blog. There's a way of doing it on the blog, which is at www.barywinbolt.com. You can get in touch with me any one of three ways. So I'm happy to take questions, and honestly, I think I'd rather have them up ahead because, of course, it gives me a little time to reflect and give a succinct response. But I need grist to this mill, I need material to be able to talk about rather than just banging on about myself, which so far I've been doing today in an effort to explain what we're doing here. I will tell you about somebody I was speaking to, not in the UK, some time ago, about being beset by an overpowering feeling of resentment and hostility to another person. And more recently, it had started to wake them up at night, 4 o'clock in the morning, the usual thing, with those vengeful thoughts and wishing the other person ill. In other words, they'd had a conflict that wouldn't go away. Now, the interesting thing about this came up more recently because I was speaking to somebody else about a similar situation. The interesting thing about persistent thoughts is that although they appear intrusive and they appear to have a life of their own, we do have control over them, but we have to learn to control them, and when we have to train them to get out of our life or to only occur to us when we want them. And that's, of course, what a lot of my work is about. You can find out things on the blog about that. I've got posts in there for how to change your thinking, how to change your thinking style. I believe I've also got an article on explanatory style as well. But if not, there are certainly references to it, and you'll be able to find the literature through that. Now, the point about this was that the person who was nursing this these vengeful thoughts for somebody who they never saw these days, and it was long gone, but it was still disturbing them, it brought to mind a little story. And I think the story is probably a way to wind this up today as an early one of these meetups. It'll allow me to spread the word and build the numbers next week. And also for you, the viewers, to come up with some questions if you want to. I hope you'll tune in again, but if not, I'll understand that basically I've got to up my game or something. So keep your interest. Anyway, the story goes like this. There were, you may have heard it, some monks in an Eastern culture. I think they probably say they're Buddhist monks, and these particular monks had taken a vow of silence. And they were on a long trek. It was going to last them several days. And they were into about day 4, and they were about 1 or 2 days from their destination when they were walking along a very muddy track. And it was quite slushy and unpleasant. And they came to a point where there was a young woman standing in beautiful kimono, waiting to cross the muddy track to the bank on the other side. But she was unable to do it without, of course, spoiling her beautiful clothes and generally making a mess of herself. And of course, as these monks had taken a vow of silence, they couldn't speak, but they could listen. And as they approached, the young lady said to them, "Excuse me, sirs, I wonder if you could help me. I need to get across the bank, and I need to get to the other side." And the monk number 1 made a noise of assent, like or certainly, or something like that, walked over to her, picked her up, carried her to the far bank, and put her down. And they went on their way. Monk number 2 was incensed about this, absolutely incensed, and he nursed this. He carried this with him all the way to their destination a day or so later. And when they finally got there and they were settling in, and he could contain himself no longer, he broke his own vow of silence, and he said to monk number 1, he said, "I can't believe you did that. I can't believe that you not only broke your vow with a word, but you also actually had contact with a female. You know we're not allowed to do that." And monk number 1 simply looked at him and said, "Yes, but I put her down on the other bank, and you're still carrying her." And I don't need to explain the metaphor. I think that very often when we're carting stuff around with us, we do have more choice, perhaps, than we think. And that's just one example of why life doesn't have to be like that. So, thank you very much for joining. I'd be really interested to hear any comments you have via the blog or email. I'll be on again, same time next week. As I said at the beginning, I think I'm going to move it back probably to 8 p.m. in July, because people have told me this is a little too early. But for now, because I've advertised it as 6 p.m, I'm going to keep it like that. I'll also wait for some comments to come in from overseas and see how that's working. So all the best. Thank you very much indeed for watching and for your participation. And I'll look forward to talking to you again next week and maybe answering some of your questions. Goodbye.